Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Reed from Zendesk, and this is How to Raise Your CX Game. We're here to talk about the recent CX maturity research that Zendesk and Enterprise Strategy Group conducted. We're here to discuss how to become CX champions. And we're here so that I could pull together a group of my friends and CX peers to talk about how they've raised their CX game and how they can help you. They've agreed to do this live, so bring all your questions about agent experience, customer experience, and operational agility. These folks are smart, so they can handle your hard stuff. But first, for the next 18 minutes, we're going to hear a few pre-recorded bits of wisdom from our experts, like the power of understanding your customer, the importance of consistency, and the necessity of agent self-care. Oh, and Molly Bloom from Molly's Game and her dual athlete younger brother, Jeremy, are here as well to talk about how they became champions. The videos are short so that we can cover all the big stuff live. So let's take a listen, and we'll see you on the other side.
Hello, my name is Annette Franz, and I am founder and CEO of CX Journey Inc. My tip for becoming a CX champion includes customer understanding, such an important thing for every organization to do. I define customer understanding as three different things, right? It's listen, characterizing, and empathizing. Listening is all about all the different ways that you get feedback from your customers and the data that your customers leave behind as they interact and transact with you. Combining those two and acting on what you learn is really the key to being a CX champion and to upping your CX game. The second way is to characterize. Characterize is all about developing personas. How can you really understand your customers without doing the research, without talking to them, and understanding who they are, what their pain points are, problems to solve, jobs to be done. This is what we do when we develop personas. They are research-based personifications of the different types of customers you have, different groups of customers that you have, so that you can then go and design an experience that fits those personas. And the next level to developing personas to design the experience is then adding that personalization level to it. And that comes from, again, the data that you have about your customers and what you know about your customers. The third way to understand your customers is what I call empathize. And that is all about walking in your customer's shoes, and I'm talking about journey mapping. And you have to remember that journey mapping is both a tool and a process. The tool is where we map the customer's journey with the customer. A customer journey map includes what the customer is doing, thinking, and feeling. And if it doesn't have those things, then it's not a journey map, okay? And then the process part of it is that we do current state mapping, we do future state mapping, we map service blueprints so that we can really understand what's happening behind the scenes, what's happening on the inside that's facilitating and designing or delivering the experience that your customers are having. So it's really important to put all those three pieces together, implement it, prototype, test, and launch that with your customers. So you have a lot of work to do, but once you take the time to really understand your customers, you will then be able to design and deliver an experience for them.
Hey, this is Jeff Toister, author of the Service Culture Handbook, and I want to share with you today how to up your customer experience or CX game. And I've got one word for you, and that is consistency. If you want to up your game, you've got to be consistent. What is that? What do I mean? If you have multiple products or services, your customers should know that they can expect the same thing from your entire line. If you have multiple locations, customers should know if I go to one location or another location, that experience should be pretty consistent. And if you have multiple employees, customers should be able to trust that they're going to have a consistent experience no matter who they're interacting with. So it shouldn't be some random chance if they get some person on the phone, email, chat, etc. Is this going to be good or bad? If you're consistent, customers won't have to worry. Now, why is this important? Customers evaluate the experiences they have with companies and brands based upon how well that experience matches or doesn't match their expectations. And where do customers get expectations from? A lot of them come from prior experience. So if a customer knows consistently, I've had a good experience with your company or your brand, they're going to trust that you'll keep delivering. On the other hand, if the experience is all over the place, one day it's good, another day it's great, and still another day it's terrible, when they have that terrible experience, they'll sense that unevenness, and that prompts your customer to give your competition a try. So consistency prevents your customers from thinking about your competitors. Now, how do we deliver this? How do we get consistent? There's 3 big steps that I think you can easily focus on. Step 1, define what consistency means for your organization. I call this a customer experience vision. It's simply a shared definition of an outstanding experience that gets everyone on the same page. And if you want to test this right now, well, not right now, but at the end of this video, if you want to test this, ask a random sample of employees to describe a great customer experience for your customers. And I'm going to guess a few things will happen. 1, you'll get a lot of great answers. And 2, you'll get a lot of inconsistent answers. If you want to be consistent, we all have to have that same definition of a great experience. So definition, that's the first step. Step 2, we have to operationalize it. We have to design our operations, whether it's processes, procedures, tools, training, empowerment. We have to design all of that to deliver that consistent experience. If there's any gaps along the way, we won't be able to execute. Step 3, we have to recover from our service failures. No matter how good you are, there will be times when you don't deliver a great experience. And that's a moment of truth. If you identify that opportunity and recover, you can restore your customers' faith in your product or your brand. If, on the other hand, you miss the opportunity, once again, you give your customer an opportunity or a reason to think about your competition. So when service failures happen, we have to recover, but we also have to learn from whatever happened so that we can fix the issue and prevent it from happening to the next customer. So if you want to raise your customer experience or CX game, there's one word you need to think about, and that is consistency.
Hello, I am Jenny Sue Dempsey. I am a customer experience and customer service leader, and I am also a self-care coach for customer service agents on the front lines. And I am here to tell you some ways to raise your CX game a little bit. Are you ready? Here's how I recommend you raise your CX game. These are just some things I've learned along the way. Start by asking your team what is working and what is not. That will tell you a whole heck of a lot. Do they feel like humans or cogs in a wheel? Be sure to check in on how they feel. Feedback, listen to the feedback, make it easy to be heard. Changes, make improvements, and give credit and inform along the way. Because customer experience is just people helping people every day. Oh, here's another thing to step it up. Burnout is real, even for the tough. Now this looks different for everyone, but remember to care for you as you move along. Do you feel like a human or a cog in the wheel? Be sure to check in on how you feel, and feedback. Listen to the feedback. Make it easy to be heard. Changes, make improvements, and give credit and inform along the way. Because customer experience is just people helping people every day. Because customer experience is just people helping people every day. And that's my advice for you. And if you can sing it, even better.
Hi everyone, I'm Molly Bloom, author of Molly's Game, and I'm here with my baby brother to talk a little bit about what it means to be a champion and all things involved. So, Jeremy, you want to say hi?
Well, always a pleasure to share the stage, although virtual stage, with my big sis, Moll. So I am affectionately known as Molly Bloom's younger brother. That's the headline of my bio. Beyond that, I spent a good part of my life pursuing sports, the sport of football and the sport of skiing, and was able to climb both sports to a level of the Olympic level in skiing, representing the United States in 2 Olympics, and the NFL level, drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles and Pittsburgh Steelers. Go Eagles, and go Broncos, because I'm from Denver. So, yeah.
And then our other brother is a Harvard-educated cardiothoracic surgeon. So, like, this
the
was
underachiever in the family. Yeah. Are you talking about him? The middle guy, the guy stuck in between, Jordan?
This guy stuck in between, but
Harvard heart surgeon.
Literally, growing up, this was my dinner table. So, Jeremy, you kind of gave a little bit of a background, but at the tender age of 19, you became number 1 in the world in mogul skiing. And, I can't even imagine what it would be like to have to hold it all together at 19 with that, with that sort of pressure. My question for you is, I'd love to know, like, what you attribute as the most important, the most salient takeaways about getting there, being number 1 in the world, and then staying there, and kind of what that looked like for you.
Well, you might have remembered this, but when I was 10 and we were watching the Olympics with Mom and Dad and Jordan, that's really when I knew the dream, just caught me. I was so caught up in becoming an Olympian, and I told Mom and Dad that I want to ski in the Olympics and play in the NFL. And Mom and Dad said, hey, you can do that if you put your mind to it and you attack your dreams. And I think the word that really stood out to me then and now is attack. Like, you can't just dream of something. Just dreaming of something won't get you there, right? As you know, better than anybody. And both of our parents have a healthy disrespect for the impossible. Like, we were born in an environment where it's like, you can do whatever you want if you put your mind to it. Learning how to deal with, big spotlights was evolution. My first Olympics at 18, that was a really big spotlight. I couldn't really deal with it. It was hard coming into those Olympics as the number 1 ranked skier in the world. And I don't think it was until I started playing big-time college football in front of 70,000 people every Saturday, where it was like, okay, this is how I can use the mental muscle to be able to prepare for big moments like that, big spotlights, big moments of pressure. So I think it's an evolution. I think it's an evolution for everybody. And the mental capacity to prepare for something like that is more of the unknown. Whereas, like, how do you get stronger? Well, you go to a gym and you do these 10 things, and it's clinically proven, like, you can strengthen your muscles. But mentally, it's a little bit more abstract. It's more individualized. Mm-hmm. And as I think of your trajectory, you went from 0 to 1,000 real fast. Like, you went from, not everybody knowing your name to everybody knowing your name and being the feature of this huge movie that Aaron Sorkin wrote and produced. How did you deal with that? Because my evolution was kind of like this. It was growing. Yours just went from like 0 to like national and worldwide scenes so quickly.
It's just about bringing that frame of reference within, and deciding like who and what you want to be and like what you're willing to do with that. And then being able to walk through these difficult, uncomfortable situations. So, it was all those experiences. It was watching you, as a young age, accomplish these incredible, impossible things, coming at it, especially in football, as an underdog, like you're not the biggest guy on the field, but you went out there and you were
actually the smallest every game I think I played in.
Exactly.
So I'm the opposite of the biggest.
But also just, being able to be like, I'm torn up inside. I'm freaked out. I've got like an inner chirping going on that is telling me this is insane and I shouldn't do this. And then just taking that breath and doing it anyway, over and over and over, that prepared me for, not only the moment of the movie coming out, but like of being finished, of being in ruins, of my reputation being destroyed, of having to overcome addiction and like being millions of dollars in debt and a convicted felon, and saying, you know what, I still have a shot, and here's what it's going to look like. And we talk a lot about like the stillness inside and being able to be still and be clear and bring that frame of reference within. And, those are, it's about how you live. Your choices throughout your whole life, as minimal as they seem, culminate to this, like, to this character of who you are and what you're able to accomplish.
Yeah. Makes me think like there's only a few amount of certainties in life, right? Like taxes being one of them, death, and maybe not a lot of other ones, but one certainty is no matter who you are, you will fail at something in your life. I mean, Walt Disney was fired for a lack of imagination before he started Disney, right? Steve Jobs was fired from Apple. Michael Jordan cut twice in high school. So no matter who you are, no matter what you do, you're going to fall on your face. We're all going to fall on our face. We literally fell on our face as infants learning how to walk, right? But we got back up. We kept taking steps. We learned how to walk. And I think to your point, like your journey has been such an ups and downs. I mean, the convicted felon, the rehab, the getting your life back together, getting your moral compass pointed north, and being so vulnerable and authentic with everybody. Because I see you speak and I see you talk in the media, and you're just yourself. Like you're so raw and authentic. And I think it's why people gravitate towards you. It's why people have gravitated towards you your whole life, is because you have this level of humility and openness, and you understand that your failures or your inevitable adversity in your past has never defined you. You've always gotten up really quickly and said, hey, it's a new day, new challenges, new opportunities. I'm just going to keep moving. But to your point, like we were raised, if you fell down, you got up, you put some duct tape on it, and you kept moving. And that was the only way to survive in the Bloom family. If you felt bad for yourself, if you became a victim, if you blamed other people for a mistake that you made, you just weren't going to survive. Like you weren't going to make it. And I do think that instilled a tremendous amount of grit and resiliency in both of us. And I'm grateful for that.
For sure. I couldn't agree more. And then, mom playing her counterpart of like, make your life matter. Your name matters. What you do, how you show up matters. And, I remember at night, she used to lay in bed with us and we would look at our day and look at, all right, how do we show up today? Were we good people? And that's such an incredible practice to have. I actually picked that up later in life. That sort of like going over your day and looking at how you showed up. And because, if there's something I've found out in life is that it's not enough to just be ambitious and successful and care about yourself. Like you have to care about other people. That is a huge part of the equation.
Welcome back, everyone. And a big thank you to Annette, Jeff, and Jenny for your words of wisdom. And now I want to welcome everyone. So if you can go ahead and take yourself off of, or put your videos back on and take yourself off of mute. And I want to now welcome everyone back, and Paxton from Zendesk and Kevin from Slack. And while you all may not be champion skiers, I know you all have a lot to say about CX. And if Molly and Jeremy piqued your interest, we're going to hear a little bit more from them a bit later. But now I've gathered you all today so that we can talk about raising your CX game. All month long, Zendesk has been talking about CX maturity and the findings from our research with ESG. And in that research, which everyone, if you want, you can read about on our website, they identified 7 best practices of CX champions. And those 7 best practices, just to remind everyone, are necessary training and education, yay, proper staffing levels, acting on customer feedback, making changes based on customer feedback, comprehensive metrics and KPIs, timeliness of data, and solid tech and tools. So before we dive into those 7 best practices and all of your fantastic champion advice, I want to address a topic that Jeff raised to me a couple of months ago, maybe a week ago. I don't remember. Time is all irrelevant at the moment. But this is a topic you raised, Jeff, and I know Annette has some opinions on this as well. So Jeff, where do these 7 best practices belong? Or asked another way, what comes before the 7 best practices?
Well, and Sarah, I really appreciate you asking me about this so much. It goes back to something I said in the video, which is consistency and having agreement. You know, something that Jeremy Bloom said that really struck me is he didn't say, I have a vision to be great, which is kind of generic. He said, I want to make the Olympics. I want to make the NFL. And so if you're tuning in today and you're thinking, what do I do with these things? The very first thing you have to do is gain internal agreement on what a great customer experience looks like. Once you've picked that very specific destination, then you could apply those 7 concepts and work towards consistency. But until you do that, you don't have clear direction.
And Jeremy also said something that struck me too, is that you don't have to be the biggest. You don't have to be the largest company. You don't have to have the most revenue. You don't have to have the biggest customer experience department. It's really what you choose to do with it and how you want to attack these best practices. So Annette, where do you start? Is there, on this journey, is there one of the best practices that you start with, or can you just jump in and focus on any?
This is actually a great question because it's an important thing to consider, right? I'm going to go I'm pointing this way because Jeff's over here on my screen, but I'm going to go even further back. I'm going to go further back and start with the foundation, right? The foundation of the organization, right? If you don't have leadership that is committed to the work that needs to be done, aligned, they've all got to be aligned. Otherwise, forget the enterprise-wide, notion. It's not existing, right? So they've got to be, the leadership has to be committed and aligned. And the culture is the second thing that has to be in place, right? A customer-centric culture is one that's deliberately designed to be that way. And it's top down. The CEO and the executives have committed to putting the best interest of customers into everything that we do, right? And that doesn't mean that we say yes to customers all the time or that the customer is always right. That means that, and I like to put it in this sort of context, right? No discussions, no decisions, no designs without bringing in the customer voice, right? Without asking, how will this impact the customer? How will it make her feel? What value will it add? What problems will it solve for her? That's what a customer-centric culture is all about. So where do you begin? Leadership and culture. That foundation has to be in place before you can do anything else.
And I just want to remind everyone that we are taking questions live. Some are coming in, but please go ahead and ask those in the Q&A and we'll do our best to get to all of them. Now, Kevin, since all of these best practices are equally as important, and I know that at Slack you have a very customer-centric culture and a very customer-centric mindset, but which of these best practices do you feel like Slack has mastered?
Yeah, I think it's acting on customer feedback and making changes based off of them. Annette just talked about culture, and I think at Slack, this really starts with our mission, which is making working lives simpler, more pleasant, and more productive. And that actually continues with customer experience and where we live within our organization. So we made a decision to place customer experience inside of our product pillar. So my leadership's peer groups are the ones that are making our executive decisions. What are we doing with our product? And we all know that we're building software for our customers. And we need to create that clear line of communication and idea flow in a way that's not restricted by organizational boundaries. So in customer experience, we are so dedicated to being this champion for the voice of the customer, and this close alignment with product actually helps our company truly understand what we're hearing, whether that's roadblocks or friction points that that our customers are bringing to us. And this has multiple benefits. So, first, we're providing a better experience for our customers so that they never have to reach out to us. But that also helps us free up space for our agents so that they can focus on the highest impact, most critical items. And then second, we have a belief that our customers are busier than we are. And if they need to reach out to us, we're actually taking them away from what they need to do. So if we can improve that experience upstream by listening and actioning feedback, that actually prevents them from needing to knock on our door for assistance.
I want to stop you right there because that is such an extraordinary way of describing what our intentions usually are in a contact center, right? We get sometimes a bad rap with the concepts around diverting, or we don't want, we're doing everything we can to stop customer contact to us. And it's like, no. We're actually trying to self-serve. We want you to serve yourself wherever we can. We want you to get the information, and we want to get a step ahead of any possible issue that you may have. So I love that you just said that customers are busy, and the intention behind what you're doing is to keep them from contacting you because they got other stuff to do. They got their own work to do. So we actually got a question from Jolene that I want to just jump in and ask you very quickly, Kevin. And that is, if you can you share some of the changes that Slack has made that is in direct response to that customer feedback? So what's one cool thing that you've done that it's been like a customer told us they needed it?
Yeah, so I think as we continue to move into the enterprise space, I can go on and on about some of our enterprise features that have really been, brought to the forefront in terms of necessity. So whether that's enterprise key management, which is a critical feature for our financial companies, or better user management, because as we started at Slack, we were a tool for maybe 100, 200, 300 people, and now we're serving customers that are in the hundreds of thousands. So getting that customer feedback directly around what we can do to better maintain and manage our platform, that all came from our customers and the insight that they provided to us.
Paxton, that's a perfect segue into you. You run product, you're the head of product for our support product, which is, I would say, inarguably the largest and most utilized from our customers. When should people be looking at their technology and saying, ooh, I think I need to upgrade. I think I need to change. Maybe it's not really working for my customers the way that I thought it was.
Yeah, I think the best way to think about that is to, again, there's a consistent theme on this panel, look at it from the customer's perspective. And I think it's important to just recognize and embrace the fact that modern expectations from customers around service levels, they're incredibly high. In general, we live in a society of instant gratification, and that clearly transfers over to the customer's expectation around service. I mean, we have interesting data that kind of points out that, and this number is probably even higher, 70% of customers expect self-service. I think 9 out of 10 customers would love to be able to message a business. And these are the tools that you use, and this is before we even get to talking about customer expectations around the speed of response. And so as you start to evaluate all of those requirements around a great customer experience, you quickly begin to realize that it's almost impossible to satisfy those expectations without using some level of tools and technology. And as you start to evaluate that, it really comes down to, what is needed from a customer service operations perspective within your business to be able to deliver against these very high expectations that customers have.
That's an excellent point, because our customer expectations do continuously rise. And one of our mutual customers, Slack and Zendesk, has a question around integrations. And they're curious, are there any features with both products together?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to comment on that. And Kevin, please jump in as well. But certainly our side conversations feature and the Slack integration that we have there. Side conversations is essentially a feature within Zendesk support that allows you to bring in other members of your business, teams, functions within your business that may be required to help you solve a particular customer issue. These may be team members that are outside of your customer service operation. You can actually kind of establish a conversation with those functional teams, being able to attach the ticket that's in question that you're working on. And we have some really interesting integration with Slack that kind of further empowers and enables that internal conversation. But Kevin, I'd be happy to have you comment on that as well.
Yeah, I think this actually ties back to, customer data and insights being a critical piece of, raising your customer experience game. I know, internally, we use Zendesk, and, the fact that we're able to get real time, ticket data over to our engineers or over to our product teams to help really amplify that voice as a customer, it's powerful. And it, goes back to what I was saying earlier around, eliminating those organizational silos. I think this integration actually helps facilitate a lot of those engagements.
And Jenny, I'm going to get to you in just a second about the human side of this, because it's such an important thing. But first, Kevin, you said something which really struck me, and I want to drop this back to Annette around so many of these best practices that we're talking about have to do with full understanding of your customer. And do you have to have a complicated analytics system in place for that to happen, to do the things that Paxton and Kevin just described?
Yes and no. A lot of companies that get started don't have that, right? And it's a good place to get started. But I think if you really want to raise your CX game, and if you really want to mature your CX, processes, strategy, everything, you do have to have, and not all systems out there are complicated, right? But you do have to have a platform that is enterprise-wide, that allows you to bring in the feedback data and what the other data that I'll call the other data, the breadcrumbs of data that customers leave behind when they interact and transact, right? So we have to have a way to bring those together, and we have to have a way to also use that data proactively, in a proactive way, right? So if you've got an analytics platform that has predictive and prescriptive capabilities, and that's integrated with your call center or your CRM software, so that we always say right data, right people, right time, and so if we've got those capabilities, so short answer is yes and no. That was sort of the longer answer, but ultimately, if you want to raise your CX game, you're gonna get a big boy, big girl platform.
All right. So Jenny, let's move on to the people side of things. And oh, by the way, excellent song. And I have a feeling we're going to get some requests for those lyrics so that people can move, or that they can share those with their own teams. So if you don't mind, we will share those. But we have all heard this adage of happy employees make happy customers, right? But your passion goes significantly deeper than that. Why do you have such a focus on self-care for frontline agents?
Well, thank you that's such a great way to phrase it, because the passion is not necessarily that I love self-care or that I'm an expert at it. It's really personal for me, because as I like to call it, a semi-retired people pleaser, I've really learned the hard way by burning out so many times. Like, self-care is a huge challenge for me. I keep repeating the same cycles over and over, where I say yes when I mean no, and stuff down my true feelings by working extra hard, burning out. And that can look like different things for different people. For me, it was anxiety attacks, or, eating disorder related things, or self-harm. And I didn't feel I could talk about this outside of just like going to a therapist or writing in my journal, for fear of literally being judged or losing my job. So, 10 to 15 years ago, when I was like struggling through all this stuff, no one was talking about this. Like, there were not webinars or, art blog articles about the importance of self-care for customer service agents. And no one was getting real about it. And so eventually I started to feel a little more comfortable. And when I started to talk about it, I realized, my gosh, I'm not alone in this. Like the teams that I manage, my coworkers, folks in other departments, we're human, and it's not about diet and exercise. Sometimes self-care gets kind of put in this bucket where eat right and work out. And it's like, wait. There's so many other things. It's so much bigger, setting boundaries in and out of the office and, having the right tools and resources to do our jobs. Like, honestly, like if we have an internal knowledge base to answer questions, imagine how much stress that takes off of our day to be able to help customers. And then in the long run, we are ultimately taking care of ourselves because we have what we need. We have the tools and, learning to recognize different types of stress because we need some stress, right? Like we need it to fuel us and to really, really pay attention to our repeating patterns. Like I mentioned mine, like I just kept saying yes when I meant no, but like I wasn't calling myself out on it. So calling ourselves out, speaking up for ourselves when things aren't right, and realize that what works and doesn't work for us may be different for someone else. There's no cookie cutter approach. And honestly, like self-care isn't pretty. It doesn't look like how it does on Instagram. It's really ugly sometimes, right? Like, and that's just the work we have to do. And, we're all really great at advocating for the customer, and advocating for ourselves is a necessary extension of that. So, in order to take the best care of our customers, we have to start with ourselves. And
that is something that I would say has come out of the last 7 months of us all being in isolation, being in lockdown, going through the pandemic, is we've been having more conversations around self-care, particularly for our front lines. And I love that has really become the forefront of a lot of conversations in companies. To your point, we haven't done enough talking about that. And Jeff, it goes beyond just taking care of ourselves and talking about it. There's also a training component to this, correct? And you've invested most of your very brief life, because I know how young you are, in training and and frontline agent education. Where does that come into play with helping our agents feel like they're in control and can support the customer and are helping us on that way to becoming CX champions?
I appreciate that you asked me that. And I have to tell you, the answer is a little difficult for me to say. To give you some context, I've been a trainer for over 25 years. I'm passionate about training. I love training. And I would love to tell you that training is the most important thing you can do. And it's not. We need to put training in its place. Now, let me give you an example. My wife is having a challenge with her wireless provider. And I don't want to name the company, but it does rhyme with Horizon. And the reason I bring this up is she had a billing problem. So she calls to say, hey, I need help with this billing problem. And the agent's like, well, I can fix it and give you a credit. And then the next month, same billing problem. And then the next month, same billing problem. And companies like this might offer some training to give the agent some tips to better handle that angry customer. But I want to go back to what Kevin and Paxton said, which is, why not take that data point and just fix the product? If you fix these problems, if you fix these customer experience inconsistencies, you don't need as much training. You don't put the onus on the agent. And I think that's the problem. Let's fix our product. Let's fix our service. And then our need for training is much, much less. Training can fix, I don't know how to do it. It cannot fix, I'm not able to do it because the system or the product won't let me.
That's fantastic advice. And Kevin, I see you nodding your head. You have an engineering background, which is a little bit unique to be in the position that you are. And how do you think that that's helped you bridge that gap that Jeff just talked about, or help Slack for that matter?
Yeah, I actually think it comes down to setting an example as a leader. So like, I'm a nerd, and I am the first to admit it, and I love to admit it. And I actually get excitement when, I dive into logs and error messages and into our web application code when something goes wrong. And, this sense of pride that I get when I have an issue or one of our customers have an issue, and I can point to our engineers exactly where it is failing inside of our code base. And if you think about the value that brings, I just reduce the amount of time that somebody else needs to identify the problem. And from there, they can update the code, write a PR, get it approved, merge, deployed, etc. And demonstrating this as a leader actually propagates throughout our organization because our agents start to feed off of this behavior. And of course, we offer some training that deals with this level of debugging, but we know that this both helps the customer experience and it also empowers our team. And at Slack, we truly believe that the customer should never have to debug the software for us. So we look for examples where we have to ask a customer, what did you experience? Or what time was that at? Or can you try this again? And this insight actually helps us work with our engineering teams to not only improve the experience, but also introduce better logging or better tooling so that when a user is writing in with a problem, we can identify, debug it, and provide a solution with as minimal back and forth as necessary, which then ultimately it reduces the resolution time and decreases customer effort.
So I'm going to switch topics for just a second because Annette, I know you have to leave us in just a couple of minutes, and we have a question specifically for you, and I want to make sure that we get Stephanie's question answered. And she has asked, how do we get started on persona-based research to characterize a customer's experience with us? So we've been talking a lot, around the customer and getting customer centric, but that also probably means we need to know who the heck they are first, right? So how do we get started with that?
I'm going to tell you how you're not going to get started. I'll start there and then I'll answer the question. You're not going to get a group of stakeholders in the room and ask them, who do you think our customers are? Let's build the personas, because I got to tell you, there are so many companies that do that. They'll bring their stakeholders in and they'll start to do these exercises where they'll build the personas based on what they think they know about their customers and who they think their customers are. And that's just wrong, right? It's just wrong, because how do you really truly understand who your customers are without talking to them? So typically the way that we start, and there's a ton of different ways, and building personas is heavy lifting. That research is heavy lifting. It's not just something that you can do in a matter of days. There's a lot of work to be done here. And that's why oftentimes, these are 5-6 figure endeavors when you want to go and build personas. So you may start with some research that you already have, segments, the way that you've already segmented your customers in sort of these bigger buckets. But within all that, you're going to sort of funnel down. The next step you're going to do is you're going to do some qualitative research. You're going to conduct some interviews. You're going to talk to your customers and you're going to ask things like, and yes, we care about demographics and firmographics and brand preference and those kinds of things, but we're really going to get at the heart of who the customer is and what their needs are, their pain points, the problems they're trying to solve, the jobs they're trying to do, their goals, their pain points, their needs, their expectations, their motivations. All of those kinds of things need to be captured in those qualitative, in those interviews, right? You're going to do one-on-one interviews. When you're done with those interviews, you're going to have a sense of, you may at that point maybe have a sense of 10 or 12 different personas that you've got out there, right? And then the next thing you're going to do, the next step will be to go and do some quantitative research, some survey a larger swath of your customers and ask them questions that are relevant to the personas that you've already developed. Ultimately, what we're going to do is validate what we heard or what we think we heard in the qualitative, and then from there, and there's cluster analysis that needs to be done. There's all kinds of analysis that then needs to be done to ultimately come up with your personas and the pretty pictures and diagrams that we often see and infographics that we often see around who your personas are. So know that it's a heavy lift. There's a lot of work to be done. There's both qualitative, there's quantitative, there's some detailed analytics that go into it. But ultimately, in the end, you're going to have a really great artifact or a set of artifacts about who your customers really are. And I like to say, and I think I said it in the video too, is that the personas, we then use those personas to ultimately design the experience. Mm-hmm. And they're also, in designing that experience, they take us one step closer to that personalization. We use the personas because
yes,
target demographics and the segments and all of that is way too high level to A, design and experience, and then B, to ultimately get down to that personalization level. And that personalization level then comes with, the other question that you asked me about the data and the analytics platforms and bringing all that together to then ultimately personalize the experience. You've got it, you've designed it at a certain level via the persona, but the personalization through that data that we have about individual customers will take you to that personalized experience.
And you are right. It is a big, heavy lift, but once you've done it, you do need to continue to hone it.
Yes.
But the lift should really only be in that big first attempt. And Paxton and Annette, I know you have to run. I want to say thank you. And Sharif also wants to say, they love your book. So,
oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just want to say, to add to your point, personas will be, they will evolve over time, as the businesses evolve, business evolves, as the customers evolve, so you have to stay on top of that. It isn't just a one and done, just like everything else you do in terms of CX. It's not just a one and done. You've got to keep evolving those as the business and the customers evolve.
Thanks, Annette.
Thanks, everybody. Great to chat with you guys. Thank you to the audience for joining us. Look forward to seeing y'all soon. Bye.
All right, Paxton. So personas. I know we talk a lot about that at Zendesk with the product. We have a question, though, that's come in of what do you do about customers who don't trust the technology or don't want to actually use the technology for what we think it should be for? How do you manage those situations, and how do you evolve the product so that it actually works for everybody?
Yeah, and I think that kind of plays into your choice and selection of tools that you're going to use to manage and run your operation. I think you need to make sure that you select a platform or a set of tools that enable you to be able to speak to the diversity of customers that are out there. And I think that that's what ties in really nicely to what Annette was just talking about in terms of understanding your personas. If you understand that there is a specific demographic of your customer base that prefers to not use messaging or prefers to give you a phone call and they want to talk to someone live, then you need to make sure that your infrastructure and your tool set can support that. It's really important. It's really important to understand, the diversity of channels that your customers will use. It's important to have, essentially an omni-channel platform that can support easily all those different channels and enable your agents to be able to effectively have that conversation with all those types of customers.
I appreciate and thank you for that. We are winding down with time, so I want to make sure that I hit on a few of these questions that have come in. And so I'm going to round robin as we wrap up here. So Jenny, Sharif wants to know, how do you motivate frontline agents to not just want to support customers, but how do you get them to also leave customers with a positive emotion, whether or not they've been able to completely solve their challenge or not? How do you coach that?
Ooh, that is a big question. I think it starts with what Jeff was talking about earlier with the vision. Are we all on the same page with what we're doing? And then, as far as leaving customers with a positive emotion, I think that depends on, the communication channel and how we are communicating what's happening, because we can't always leave them with a positive emotion, because we have no control over their emotions, their reactions to what we say, whether we say something good or bad. It's what happens. It's the same for all of us. So I think we have to look at it from the angle of, are we telling the truth? Are we being, is this real? Like, is this an authentic answer? We're not reading from necessarily a script. This isn't something that we are just like being lazy about. Lazy is a, whatever, but like not going to ask someone for help. And when we, are just giving them an answer. So are we doing as much as we can to support them? And are we doing this from an authentic way? And how are we saying it to them? I think we can look at the words, the choice of words, even some of the negative things, like when we have to tell them no, can be spun in a direction where there are still opportunities for us to help. We can't do this, but we can do, and share that and get a little creative with our responses. And then that leaves them with a little more trust. It may not necessarily be the most positive experience, but they will trust our brand. It's going to tell them the truth and going to treat them like humans, and they're going to get what they need.
Jeff, I want to piggyback on that because I know that those are a lot of the concepts that you talk about with training and coaching agents. But what is one thing that you want people to stop doing right now that will help them become CX champions? I know you have a laundry list. You've given me tips many, throughout the years. So what's one thing that people should stop doing in their org that'll help them raise their CX game?
Well, it's funny because I'm thinking about Jenny's answer, and it's going to sound like I'm disagreeing with her, and I don't think we really are. I want you to stop trying to motivate your agents. They don't need to be motivated. If you've hired correctly, they want to help customers. The problem, the real issue, is agent demotivation. They come to our organizations, we promise Disneyland, and then once they actually start serving customers, they realize Disneyland's burned down.
Or it's just closed for the pandemic. It's just closed. It may not have burned down.
That's right. We have to make it easy for agents' natural motivation to be there. And what crushes their natural motivation is when they are not enabled to help their customers. They want to help. So let's fix all those barriers that get in their way. You don't need another incentive program. You don't need another reward system. What you need to do is get all of those obstacles out of your agent's ways, and their natural motivation will reemerge. So it's not motivation. We need to stop demotivating our agents. And that's a huge fix.
I think there's going to be a lot of people who have written that down today. And it's like, stop motivating and definitely stop demotivating. I like that.
Can I add to that really quickly, Sarah?
Oh, yes.
And I think this will piggyback, and I think it also kind of extends what Kevin was talking about earlier. I had an interesting experience prior to Zendesk where unique opportunity as a product leader, I actually had responsibility for the customer service operation. And I think, one of the things that I realized is that, our customer service team is the closest touch point that we have to our customers, right? And they're just an invaluable channel for feedback around the customer that's actually going to help me build and develop a better product. And, as much as possible, I tried to work with that team to help them understand that, to a certain extent, you guys are all product managers as well, right? I mean, you are on a daily basis gathering feedback, helping to, kind of gather requirements. You're essentially helping us, putting us in a position to improve the product. And I think as much as possible is if you can make your customer service team, kind of aware of that and embrace that responsibility and that opportunity, I think that's also going to, kind of help them get, much more motivated and excited about those interactions that they have with their customers. So it's more than just, addressing a point in time question or need. It's actually helping to build the business by building a better product.
And it's also getting us out of these silos that we tend to fall into. This is the support department. This is the product department. This is the training team. We've got to stop thinking like that. And so, Kevin, I'd like you to take us home with a response to this question that comes in from Caesar, which is, do you foresee organizations hiring more hybrid roles? Do you see CX as, a merging of support and success and product and community management all in one role?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And, I think we're starting to see that, or we've been seeing that, over the past few years as well. And, the types of backgrounds that we're seeing in the diversity it's incredible. I mean, we're talking, economic backgrounds or education backgrounds. We're talking about communication backgrounds. And I think the more that we can start to pull in these, different areas across the spectrum, that just provides a better experience for our customers, because our customers are exactly that. They're all across the board. They're all across the world in terms of their backgrounds and where they're coming from. So yeah, just to put a pin on that is absolutely, like, it's happening now, and it's something that we at Slack continue to encourage, and the benefits are definitely there.
And with that, no matter how large you are, how small your organization is, there is so much great opportunity. And we've heard from all of you as experts. Thank you so very much for sharing your tips and your personal experience with us today. And now I hope you all had as much fun as I did. It was wonderful to get you all together. And before we wrap up, let's bring back Molly and Jeremy for one last little bit of conversation.
I just want to pivot a little bit here. So definitely you had some super early life success and became a champion at such a young age. And then, you also had some failures. And I just want to talk about what that looks like and how you sort of pivoted from that.
I had to deal with that. And I created this 48-hour rule. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do whatever I need to do for 48 hours. I'm going to feel bad for myself. I'm going to not talk to anybody because I'm more of an internal person. I'm going to dissect every single thing that happened, and then I'm going to distill it down to its simplest form, take those lessons, and then I'm moving on 1,000 miles an hour ahead and not looking back.
So the next thing is like, let's find out all the information I can find about this next step. Let me gather as much data as I can. Let me talk to people. Let me ask the questions. And then let me create a vision. And then it's like all about execution from there. And anticipating that any reinvention, any change is going to be difficult and that you're just going to keep showing up and just believe that you're going to get there, even if there's pivots along the way.
That's it. So please don't forget to check out the research, take a CX maturity quiz, and catch up on all the other broadcasts in the CX Champion series. We appreciate you spending time with us on your quest to raise your CX game. So stay safe, be helpful, and we'll chat again soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.